The cockpit door swings open. Captain Reynolds storms toward seat 1A, his face twisted with contempt. He points at the elegant black woman sitting there, diamond bracelet catching the cabin light. You need to move. Now. What he doesn't know will cost him everything. This woman owns more than just this seat. She owns the entire airline. And she's about to teach him a lesson he'll never forget. Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and transformation, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. If you believe that dignity and respect should be universal, go ahead and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe because stories like this remind us why standing up for what's right always matters. Now, let's see exactly how this powerful moment unfolded. The January cold seeped through the windows of the private luxury aircraft sitting on the tarmac at LaGuardia Airport. Inside, the cabin hummed with the quiet efficiency of pre-flight preparations. In seat 1A, Ada Thompson sat with the practiced ease of someone who had flown hundreds of thousands of miles. At 52, she carried herself with a grace that came from 3 decades of building something from nothing. Her tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant twist. The diamond bracelet on her wrist was understated but unmistakably expensive. Everything about her spoke of success, of someone who belonged exactly where she was. But Captain Derek Reynolds saw something different. He emerged from the cockpit, his face already set in an expression Ada had seen too many times in her life. That particular combination of irritation and assumption. He was white, late 40s, with the kind of swagger that came from years of unchecked authority. Behind him trailed a young flight attendant named Jenny, her eyes wide with what looked like dread. Reynolds approached seat 1A with heavy footsteps. He didn't greet Ada. Didn't smile. Just pointed at her like she was an object that had been misplaced. "Ma'am, you need to move to economy." Ada looked up from her tablet, her expression calm. "I'm sorry, what?" "First class is reserved for premium members. You'll need to move to the back." She reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out her boarding pass, holding it up so he could see clearly. Seat 1A. Her name. Confirmed and paid in full. "As you can see, I'm assigned to this seat." Reynolds barely glanced at the boarding pass. His jaw tightened. "There's been some mistake with the system. You need to move." Around them, other passengers watched. All of them white. All of them silent. An elderly woman 2 rows back whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "She probably snuck up here." Ada felt the familiar burn in her chest. Not surprise. She'd stopped being surprised by this decades ago. But the wound was always fresh, always sharp. "There's no mistake," she said, keeping her voice level and professional. "I'd like to speak with the gate supervisor, please." Reynolds' face flushed red. "I don't have time for this. I'm in command of this aircraft, and I'm telling you to move to economy. And I'm telling you I have a confirmed first-class seat that I purchased. If there's a problem, let's resolve it with the proper supervisor." The captain's voice rose. "Ma'am, we have a schedule to keep. I don't know how you got that boarding pass, but you need to gather your things and move. Now." Ada slowly pulled out her phone and began recording. Her hands were steady, but inside, memories flooded back. Her grandmother Ruth, cleaning houses for people who treated her like furniture. Her own first day as a flight attendant, being told she didn't fit the image. Every slight, every dismissal, every time someone looked at her skin before they saw her humanity. "Stop that." Reynolds noticed the phone. "You can't record crew members without permission. I'm documenting a refusal of service. You're creating a disturbance. Put the phone away or I'll have security remove you." The co-pilot appeared then, a younger white man named Aaron Walsh. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Reynolds and Ada. But he said nothing. Just stood there, complicit in his silence. Reynolds pulled out his radio. "Ground security, this is Captain Reynolds on Flight 847. I need officers at the aircraft. We have a passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions." Jenny, the flight attendant, stepped closer to Ada. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. This has happened before." Ada turned to look at her. "What do you mean, before?" But Jenny quickly retreated, fear written across her young face. 2 security guards arrived within minutes. One was black, the other Latino. Both looked deeply uncomfortable with what they were being asked to do. The black guard, whose name tag read Marcus, met Ada's eyes. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or just the shared understanding of what this moment really was. "Sir." Marcus addressed Reynolds. "What's the situation? This woman needs to be escorted to economy. She's refusing to move." Marcus looked at Ada's boarding pass, then at her. "Ma'am, your ticket shows 1A. "I know," Reynolds snapped. "There's been a system error. She doesn't belong in first class." The air in the cabin had gone thick with tension. Every passenger was watching now. Some looked away when Ada's eyes swept over them. Others stared with open curiosity or poorly disguised judgment. Ada stood slowly, gathering her briefcase with deliberate care. She straightened her jacket. Then she looked directly at Reynolds. "I'll move. But I want your full name and employee number." Reynolds actually smirked. The arrogance in that expression was breathtaking. "Derek Reynolds. Captain. Employee number 4782. Good luck with whatever you think you're going to do." Ada walked down the aisle toward economy. Every eye followed her. Whispers rippled through the cabin. She held her head high, but her hands trembled slightly as she found a cramped seat in the back. The contrast was immediate and stark. Less legroom. Worn upholstery. The faint smell of old coffee and recycled air. She sat down and closed her eyes. And suddenly she was 9 years old again, watching her grandmother scrub someone else's floors. Hearing the casual cruelty in voices that never bothered to lower when Ruth was in the room. Her grandmother's words came back to her, clear as bells: "Remember everything, baby. Learn from their world. Then build your own better." Ada had built her own world. Skyward Aviation Holdings. 12 airlines. Worth $2.3 billion. She'd started with a $20,000 loan and one ancient plane that barely flew. Worked double shifts as a flight attendant while going to night school. Saved every penny. Faced rejection after rejection, doors slammed in her face because she was black, because she was a woman, because she didn't fit. But she'd won. She'd built an empire. And this man, this Captain Derek Reynolds, employee number 4782, had just humiliated her on one of her own planes. The wound wasn't new. But underneath the pain, something else was building. Something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. She was about to teach him exactly what it cost to underestimate Ada Thompson. As the plane filled with passengers and the engines began their pre-flight hum, Ada sat in the cramped economy seat and let the memories wash over her. Sometimes the past was the only way to understand the present. Montgomery, Alabama. 1982, Ada was 9 years old, and her world had just shattered. Her parents, killed in a car crash on a rain-slicked highway. She'd gone to live with her grandmother Ruth, a woman who worked 3 jobs and still found time to make sure Ada knew she was loved. Ruth cleaned houses for wealthy white families in the historic district. Sometimes, when school was out, Ada went with her. She remembered sitting quietly in corners, watching her grandmother scrub toilets and polish silver while the families talked around her like she wasn't there. They discussed their vacations, their children's accomplishments, their trivial complaints, never once acknowledging the woman on her hands and knees making their lives comfortable. But Ruth never complained. At night, after her shifts at the diner and the late cleaning jobs, she'd sit with Ada at their tiny kitchen table. "You watching, baby?" she'd ask. "Yes, Grandma." "You learning?" "Yes, Grandma." "Good. You remember everything about their world. You learn how it works. Then you build your own, and you build it better. You build it so people like us don't have to bow down to nobody." Ada had carried those words like a torch through every obstacle that followed. At 19, fresh out of high school with dreams of seeing the world, she'd applied to be a flight attendant. Legacy Airways had been her first choice. The recruiter, a perfectly coiffed white woman, had looked Ada up and down with barely concealed disdain. "You're too ethnic looking for our brand," she'd said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. "Have you considered applying for our urban routes instead?" Urban routes. Code for routes where passengers of color wouldn't complain about diverse staff. Ada had applied to 6 more airlines. Rejected by all of them. Not the right image. Not what our clientele expects. Perhaps try cargo services. Finally, a small regional carrier desperate for staff had hired her. Ada worked double shifts, smiled through groping hands and racial slurs, saved every single penny. She enrolled in night classes at community college, studying business while flying during the day. She learned everything. How airlines operated. Their cost structures. Their inefficiencies. Their blind spots. And their prejudices. Once, a white passenger in first class had thrown a vodka tonic in her face. Called her a slur. Told her to get back to the ghetto where she belonged. Ada had reported it to management. They'd shrugged. "Customer is always right. Maybe you provoked him somehow." The humiliations piled up. The passengers who assumed she was there to clean, not serve. The ones who called her girl well into her 30s. The ones who touched her without permission, who made comments about her body, who treated her like property. But Ada kept watching. Kept learning. And kept saving. The turning point came when she was 28. She'd been working a flight when she'd overheard 2 executives in first class talking about selling their struggling charter company. 8 planes, mostly old, servicing routes nobody else wanted. They were asking $150,000. Ada had $12,000 in savings. She went to her grandmother. Ruth was 71 by then, her hands gnarled from decades of cleaning. She listened to Ada's plan, then nodded once. "How much you need?" $8,000. "I know it's everything you have, Grandma. I know it's your house." Ruth had mortgaged her paid-off home without hesitation. "This is exactly what I saved for. You go build that better world, baby." Ada bought her first plane with that money. An ancient Cessna that barely passed inspection. She started a charter service, focusing on routes the major airlines ignored. Small southern towns. Caribbean islands. Places where people needed reliable transportation but had been written off as unprofitable. She hired diverse crews when others wouldn't. She treated passengers with dignity regardless of their skin color or bank account. Word spread. Her reputation grew. By 40, she owned 3 small airlines. By 50, Skyward Aviation Holdings was worth billions. And through it all, she tried to be better than the people who dismissed her. She'd built systems to prevent discrimination. Training programs. Complaint procedures. She'd thought she'd created something different. But sitting in this economy seat, forcibly moved from first class on her own airline, Ada realized she'd been naive. She'd built the structure, but she hadn't watched closely enough. She'd trusted others to share her values. And they'd betrayed that trust. Around her, economy passengers settled in. A young black girl, maybe 9 years old, sat across the aisle staring at Ada with confusion. The girl's mother, a Latina woman, looked angry on Ada's behalf. A white businessman in the next seat complained loudly. It's getting crowded back here. I usually sit in first class. Ada pulled out her phone and opened the secure portal to Skyward Aviation's internal systems. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling up personnel files. Captain Derek Reynolds. Employee number 4782. 12 complaints of discrimination in his file. 12. All from passengers of color. All dismissed as unfounded or passenger error or miscommunication. Her HR director had signed off on every dismissal. Her chief pilot had reviewed and approved keeping Reynolds on staff. This wasn't one racist captain. This was systematic failure. Ada's jaw tightened. She opened a new screen and began typing. Messages to her attorney. Her private investigator. Her board chair. The wheels were already turning in her mind. Not just revenge. Justice. And a complete dismantling of the rot she'd allowed to grow in her own company. She glanced up at the young black girl still watching her. The girl smiled shyly. Ada smiled back, but inside, her resolve hardened to steel. Some lessons needed to be taught. And she was about to become the teacher Captain Reynolds would never forget. The plane's engines roared to life, and the aircraft began its taxi toward the runway. Ada sat in her cramped economy seat, laptop balanced on the tiny tray table, documenting everything. But she wasn't alone in her observation. Jenny, the flight attendant who trailed Captain Reynolds earlier, began the beverage service. When she reached Ada's row, her hands trembled slightly as she poured water. The cup tipped, spilling liquid across Ada's tray table. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." Jenny grabbed napkins, leaning close to wipe up the mess. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry about what happened. He does this. Management knows. They don't care." Ada whispered back, "Tell me everything. After we land." Jenny's eyes widened, but she nodded quickly before moving on. Across the aisle, the young black girl continued to stare. Finally, she spoke up, her voice clear and confident despite her age. "You shouldn't be back here." Ada turned to her, genuinely curious. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" The girl studied Ada's face with the intensity only children possess. "You have the face of someone important. Like my teacher says about Rosa Parks. You look like you're supposed to be in charge." "Sophia." Her mother reached over, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry. She's very outspoken." Ada smiled warmly. "Never apologize for a child speaking truth." "I'm Ada." "What's your name?" "Sophia Rodriguez." "This is my mom, Carmen." Carmen leaned over, lowering her voice. "I want to apologize for what that captain did. It was wrong. And Sophia's right. You look like you belong wherever you choose to be." "Thank you. But this isn't the first time something like this has happened to you, is it?" Carmen's expression darkened. "How did you know?" I recognized the look. The resignation mixed with anger. Carmen glanced around, then spoke quietly. "I'm an immigration lawyer. I fly this route monthly for asylum cases in Houston. 3 months ago, I booked first class with my miles. When I got to the gate, they told me I'd been randomly reassigned to economy due to overbooking. But when I boarded, first class was half empty. Did you complain?" "I tried. They said the system makes mistakes." It happened again 6 weeks later. Same airline. Same excuse. I stopped complaining because I need to fly for work. Can't afford to get blacklisted. Ada absorbed this, her anger growing colder and sharper. "That's going to change." The white businessman beside Ada sighed loudly, shifting in his seat with exaggerated discomfort. He'd been complaining under his breath since takeoff. Ada turned to him. Something wrong? He looked surprised she'd addressed him. Just crowded back here. I'm usually in first class. Gold elite status. They know me up front. What do you do? Gerald Patterson. Mergers and acquisitions. I buy struggling companies, turn them around, sell them for profit. He pulled out his business card with practiced smoothness. What about you? I work in private equity. Independent investor. Patterson's interest evaporated immediately. He gave Ada a dismissive once-over. Oh. Well. Good for you. He turned away, putting in earbuds. Ada almost laughed. If he only knew. 20 minutes into the flight, Marcus, the black security guard from earlier, walked through the economy cabin ostensibly checking overhead bins. As he passed Ada's row, he slipped a small piece of paper onto her tray table without making eye contact. Ada waited until he'd moved on before unfolding it. I recognized you from Forbes. Play along. I'm documenting everything. She pulled out her phone and carefully typed a text to the number on the paper. Why? The response came within seconds. My daughter wants to be a pilot. She's 15. Brilliant. Loves aviation more than anything. Last year, she got to tour this airline's training facility. She showed Captain Reynolds her flight logbook. He told her black girls don't have the temperament for aviation. Said it would be a waste of money to train her. I've been waiting 8 months for an opportunity like this. Ada's hands curled into fists. She typed back, what do you have? Photographs of 8 separate incidents. Witness statements from 5 flight attendants too scared to report officially. Financial records showing unreported cash payments to Reynolds and 3 other captains. I work security. I see things. I document things. But who would believe airport security over captains? I needed someone with real power. You have that now, Ada typed. Stay close. The plane hit a patch of turbulence, and Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom, dripping with false charm. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some light chop. Flight attendants, please be seated. First-class passengers, will resume champagne service once we're through this rough patch. A deliberate pause. Economy passengers, beverage service will continue shortly. The segregation in his tone was unmistakable. The casual dismissal of economy passengers, the preferential treatment of first class. It wasn't just about comfort or ticket prices. It was about hierarchy. About who mattered and who didn't. Ada looked around the economy cabin. Carmen, who'd paid for first class twice and been bumped twice. Sophia, who might dream of flying planes but would face men like Reynolds at every turn. Marcus's daughter, brilliant and passionate, told she didn't have the temperament because of her skin. This wasn't just about her anymore. It had never been just about her. It was about every person of color who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Every dreamer dismissed because of their race. Every talented individual held back by prejudice masquerading as policy. Ada opened her laptop and began typing new messages. To her attorney, prepare discrimination lawsuit documentation. Multiple plaintiffs. Federal charges. To her private investigator, full audit. Skyward Aviation Northeast Division. Every employee. Every complaint. Every dollar. I need it in 48 hours. To her board chair, emergency meeting. Video conference in 3 hours. Non-negotiable. She was about to go to war. Not with guns or violence, but with truth and accountability and the full weight of the power she'd spent 30 years building. Captain Reynolds had made the worst mistake of his life. He'd underestimated Ada Thompson. And he was about to learn exactly what that cost. The turbulence grew worse over Pennsylvania, the plane shuddering through pockets of rough air. In economy, passengers gripped their armrests. But Ada noticed something strange. The shaking seemed more pronounced back here than it should be. She'd flown enough to know the difference. Marcus appeared again, this time openly approaching her seat. He leaned down, voice low. "You feel that? The extra shake?" "I noticed." "What's going on?" "Economy cabin has older stabilization equipment. Maintenance was supposed to upgrade it 6 months ago. Got delayed because of budget cuts. First class got the new system. Back here got promises." Ada's jaw tightened. She owned this airline. She'd approved budgets. But somehow this decision had been made without her knowledge. How deep did the rot go? Jenny, the flight attendant, secured the beverage cart and sat down hard in the jump seat near Ada's row. The turbulence gave her an excuse to stay put. She leaned toward Ada, her voice shaking. "I need to tell someone. I've kept quiet for 6 years, and I can't anymore. Tell me everything." Jenny's story spilled out in a rush. She'd started with the airline fresh out of college, idealistic and in love with aviation. First year, Captain Reynolds had commented on her body, suggested promotions could be negotiated privately. She'd reported him to HR. They'd called it a miscommunication and suggested she'd misinterpreted friendly mentoring. Second year, she'd watched Reynolds force an elderly Asian man from first class to economy, claiming overbooking. The man had been traveling to his wife's funeral. Jenny had tried to intervene. She'd gotten written up for insubordination. Third year, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Reynolds systematically targeted passengers of color, especially black passengers. Always first class. Always claiming system errors or overbooking or policy violations. And always, the displaced passengers were people who looked like Ada. "I documented everything," Jenny whispered. "Photos. Dates. Names of witnesses. I took it all to the chief pilot last year." "What did he say?" "He said Derek Reynolds brings in revenue. Flies extra routes. Never complains about assignments. He told me not to make waves. That sometimes passenger management requires tough decisions. That I was too junior to understand the complexities." "Revenue," Ada repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. "What revenue?" Jenny hesitated, then pulled out her phone. She showed Ada a photograph she'd taken secretly 3 months ago. It showed Reynolds accepting cash from a white passenger at the gate. "There's a scheme," Jenny said. "Reynolds and 3 other captains. They have an arrangement with certain frequent flyers. White passengers pay them $50 cash, directly. In exchange, they get guaranteed first-class seats, even if the flight's booked. The captains bump legitimate passengers to make room. The airline gets the original first-class fare, plus these passengers pay extra cash directly to the captains. And when passengers of color complain about being bumped, they're told it's system errors. The complaints get buried. The captains split the cash. It's been going on for 18 months. Ada felt sick. Her airline. Her company that she built on principles of dignity and fairness. Corrupted into a literally segregated system where white passengers could pay for the privilege of displacing black passengers. Now, let me ask you something. If you discovered corruption this deep in your own company, what would you do? Comment number 1 if you think Ada should expose everything immediately, or comment number 2 if she should gather more evidence first. And make sure to hit that like button if you believe that justice is worth more than profit, and subscribe because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. How far up does this corruption go? Does Ada's own executive team know what's happening? Stay with us to find out. The co-pilot, Aaron Walsh, suddenly appeared at the economy bathroom. When he emerged, he froze, seeing Ada. The recognition in his eyes was instant and horrified. "Ms. Thompson." His voice barely worked. "I didn't. I tried to tell him. Did you try hard enough, Aaron? He looked like he might cry. He's senior. He writes my evaluations. I have a wife, 2 kids. A mortgage. I was scared. So are the people he discriminates against. So is Jenny, who could lose her job for telling the truth. So is Marcus, who's been documenting crimes for 8 months. They're all scared, Aaron. But they're here, standing up anyway. What are you going to do? Aaron wrestled with himself. Ada could see the battle in his face. Fear versus conscience. Security versus integrity. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. I'll testify. I'll tell everything. The cash scheme, the deliberate bumping, the buried complaints. Everything. Even if it costs you your job. My kids are watching how I live. I need to show them what's right matters more than what's easy. Ada nodded once. Good man. Her phone buzzed. Rachel, her assistant, texting urgently. Where are you? Dubai meeting in 12 hours. $400 million deal. They won't reschedule. Ada looked around the economy cabin. At Sophia, drawing pictures of airplanes in a notebook. At Carmen, reviewing legal files for asylum seekers who depended on her. At Marcus, standing watch over passengers he'd sworn to protect. At Jenny, trembling but determined. At Aaron, finally finding his courage. She typed back to Rachel, cancel Dubai. Better investment opportunity here. Rachel's response was immediate. What? Are you serious? Completely. Some things matter more than money. Ada sent more texts. To her attorney, prepare emergency board meeting. Video conference in 2 hours. To her head of PR, prepare crisis statement. My direction only. Stand by. To her private investigator, full audit of Skyward Aviation Northeast Division. Every employee, every complaint, every financial transaction. I need it in 48 hours. The plane began to descend. But they weren't approaching Houston yet. They were barely past Pennsylvania. Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom, tight with false concern. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor mechanical issue. Out of abundance of caution, we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Pittsburgh for inspection. We apologize for the inconvenience. Ada's eyes met Marcus's across the cabin. He shook his head grimly. There was no mechanical issue. Aaron appeared beside her again, his face pale. He knows you've been recognized. He's going to try to have you removed in Pittsburgh. Claim you're a security threat. Get you arrested before you can do anything. How long do I have? 40 minutes. Maybe less. Ada's fingers flew across her phone. One more text, this one to her board chair, emergency motion. Remove Charles Hendricks as COO, effective immediately. Authority as majority shareholder. Vote required within 1 hour. Board chair response, Ada, what the hell is happening? Corporate cancer. I'm cutting it out. Get everyone on the line in 30 minutes. The plane descended through clouds toward Pittsburgh. Ada had 40 minutes to outmaneuver a captain trying to protect his criminal enterprise. But Derek Reynolds had made one crucial mistake. He thought she was just another passenger he could dismiss. He had no idea he was fighting someone who'd spent 30 years turning impossible situations into empires. The war had begun. And Ada Thompson never lost. The plane touched down in Pittsburgh with a rough jolt that spoke of Reynolds' agitation more than any mechanical issue. Through the window, Ada could see airport security vehicles already approaching the aircraft. Reynolds had called ahead. He was moving fast. But so was she. As the plane taxied toward the gate, Ada sent one final text to Marcus, when security boards, stay close but don't intervene unless I signal. Document everything. Then to Jenny. Get the other flight attendants ready to testify. This ends today. To Aaron, stay in the cockpit. Record everything Reynolds says. The seatbelt sign dinged off. First-class passengers were instructed to gather their belongings and prepare to deplane to the VIP lounge. Economy passengers were told to remain seated on the aircraft. Even in crisis, the segregation continued. Ada watched through the window as Reynolds climbed down the stairs and approached the security team. Four officers, led by a white woman in her late 50s whose uniform marked her as captain of airport security. Her name tag read Brennan. Reynolds was gesticulating, pointing back at the plane, his body language aggressive and urgent. Ada couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She'd seen this performance before. Angry white authority figure, claiming threat from black woman. Tale as old as time. Captain Brennan listened, her face unreadable. Then she nodded once and headed toward the aircraft. The cabin door opened. Brennan entered, her eyes scanning the economy section until they found Ada. Behind her, 3 more officers filed in. Ma'am. Brennan's voice was professional, neutral. We have a report of a passenger causing disruption and refusing to follow crew instructions. I need you to come with us. Ada stood calmly, gathering her briefcase. What specific disruption am I accused of, Captain? Brennan consulted a paper in her hand, reading from Reynolds' statement. Refusing to follow crew instructions regarding seating assignment. Recording crew members without permission. Inciting other passengers to disruptive behavior. Every word was a lie, and everyone in economy knew it. Carmen stood up, her lawyer instincts firing. That's completely untrue. I'm an attorney, and I witnessed the entire incident. This woman was removed from her assigned seat without cause. The only disruption was from Captain Reynolds. She didn't do anything wrong. Sophia's young voice rang out clear and certain. Marcus stepped forward carefully. Ma'am, I was present from the beginning as part of the ground security team. Captain Reynolds' statement doesn't match what I observed. Jenny rushed from the galley, her hands shaking but her voice steady. I'm a flight attendant on this aircraft. I can't stay quiet anymore. Captain Reynolds is lying. He's been systematically discriminating against passengers for over a year, and I have documentation. Reynolds' voice crackled over Brennan's radio. That flight attendant is disgruntled. She's facing disciplinary action. Ignore her statement. Brennan looked around the cabin. At Carmen in her lawyer's composure. At young Sophia, fierce in her certainty. At Marcus in his security uniform. At Jenny, trembling but resolute. At Ada, standing calm and dignified at the center of it all. Captain Brennan had 20 years of experience reading situations. And what she saw didn't match Reynolds' story. Everyone off the plane, she announced. All passengers, both cabins. We're conducting individual security interviews. Reynolds' voice exploded through the radio. That's not necessary. We'll miss our schedule. I have authority over this aircraft. And I have authority over security at this airport, Brennan cut him off. Your report triggered a safety protocol. I'm following it. All passengers deplane now. The first-class passengers filed out, angry and confused. White faces twisted with annoyance at the inconvenience. Some shot hostile glares toward economy, clearly blaming Ada for the delay. Gerald Patterson, the businessman, muttered loudly as he passed, "This is exactly why standards matter." Brennan organized everyone with military efficiency. Witnesses to one waiting area. Ada to a private security office. Reynolds to another room entirely. The security office was small and sterile. Brennan sat across from Ada, a recorder on the table between them. Before we start, Brennan said, I need to ask directly. Are you planning to sue the airport? Ada met her eyes. That depends on the next 10 minutes. Fair enough. Brennan leaned back. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Ada laid it out methodically. The confirmed first-class seat. Reynolds' demand that she move. His refusal to look at her boarding pass. The humiliation of being walked to economy by security. The pattern of discrimination Jenny had described. The cash scheme Aaron had confessed to. The systematic burial of complaints. Then she pulled out her phone and showed the recording. Showed her boarding pass. Showed the confirmation emails. Finally, she showed her identification. Ada Thompson. CEO and majority shareholder of Skyward Aviation Holdings. I own this airline. Brennan's eyes widened. For a moment, neither woman spoke. You own the airline, Brennan repeated slowly. I do. And I'm about to clean house. Brennan stood, paced to the window, then turned back. I've been in airport security for 23 years. I've seen this pattern at every major airline. Passengers of color getting randomly selected for extra screening. Getting, coincidentally, bumped from flights. Having their complaints dismissed as misunderstandings. It's systemic. And it's wrong. Will you help me prove it? Hell yes, I will. Over the next 90 minutes, Brennan brought in witnesses one by one. Carmen testified about her 2 previous incidents, providing specific dates and flight numbers. Marcus presented his 8 months of photographic evidence and witness statements. Jenny broke down as she confessed everything, begging forgiveness for not speaking up sooner. Aaron, the co-pilot, provided the most damning testimony. He described the cash scheme in detail. Named the 3 other captains involved. Explained how they'd split profits. Admitted he'd accepted $5,000 over the past year in exchange for his silence. Why are you confessing now? Brennan asked him. Aaron's voice cracked. Because I have a daughter. She's 7. Yesterday she asked me if I was a good person. I couldn't look her in the eye and say yes. Not anymore. Even 2 first-class passengers came forward, embarrassed but honest. They admitted paying the $50 premium directly to Reynolds, though they'd assumed it was somehow official. In another room, visible through one-way glass, Reynolds was being interviewed by a federal air marshal who'd been called in. Ada watched through the observation window as Reynolds dug himself deeper. This is ridiculous, Reynolds was saying. Some passengers are just difficult. That woman was clearly not first-class material. What do you mean by that? The air marshal asked. Reynolds, too arrogant to realize the trap, continued. You know what I mean. Look at her. Look at the passengers who complain. There's a pattern. You're saying race is the pattern? Reynolds' face went pale as he realized what he'd said. I'm not answering any more questions without a lawyer. Ada had heard enough. She couldn't hold back anymore. She pushed through the door into the interview room. Reynolds looked up, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. Who the hell? He started. I'm Ada Thompson, she said, her voice like ice. I own Skyward Aviation Holdings. I own this airline. I own the plane you just piloted. I own the uniform you're wearing. The color drained from Reynolds' face completely. And you're fired. Effective immediately. You're also being reported to the FAA for discrimination and fraud. I'm personally ensuring you never fly commercially again. And I'm going to make certain every airline in this country knows exactly what you did. Reynolds tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You humiliated me because of my skin color, Ada continued. You've done it to hundreds of others. You thought you had power. You thought being a captain made you untouchable. You were wrong. She turned to the air marshal. He's all yours. As Ada walked out, she heard Reynolds finally find his voice. "You can't do this. I have rights. This is..." The door closed on his protests. In the hallway, Brennan waited. "Federal charges are being filed. Discrimination, fraud, possibly more. The 3 other captains are being contacted now." Ada nodded. "And my HR director? Already called. Resigned 30 minutes ago rather than face investigation. Chief pilot? Suspended pending inquiry." Ada pulled out her phone. The board meeting was starting in 5 minutes. It was time to burn it all down and build something better from the ashes. Ada commandeered the airport's VIP lounge for her emergency board meeting, setting up her laptop on a polished conference table while Brennan's security team ensured privacy. At exactly 3 p.m., 8 faces appeared on her screen. The board of Skyward Aviation Holdings. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "In the past 3 hours, I've uncovered systematic discrimination, fraud, and corruption in our Northeast Division. Captain Derek Reynolds, along with 3 other pilots, has been running a cash scheme where white passengers pay extra to displace passengers of color from first class. Our HR director buried 12 complaints of racial discrimination. Our chief pilot knew and did nothing. And this pattern exists across multiple divisions." She shared her screen, showing Marcus's photographs, Jenny's documentation, the financial irregularities, the buried complaints. 3 board members looked genuinely shocked. 2 became immediately defensive. 3 sat in guilty silence. Board member Davidson, a white man in his 70s who'd been friends with the now-resigned COO, spoke up. "Ada, this is concerning, but we need to be careful about hasty decisions. Charles Hendricks built that division from scratch. Yes, there were mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" Ada's voice could have cut glass. 12 buried complaints. 18 months of fraud. Systematic racism. What part of that is a mistake? I'm just saying we should investigate thoroughly before we destroy careers. I have investigated. I have witnesses, documents, recordings, and federal authorities already filing charges. What more do you need? Charles deserves a chance to defend himself. He had chances. 12 of them. Every time a complaint crossed his desk. He chose to protect racism instead of passengers. He's out. I move that we table this discussion until we can convene in person, Davidson said. I move that we vote immediately on removing Charles Hendricks as COO, Ada countered. 7 hands went up in favor. Only Davidson opposed. This is a mistake, Davidson said. You're acting emotionally. I'm acting morally. If you can't tell the difference, perhaps you shouldn't be on this board. Davidson's face reddened. I resign, effective immediately. Accepted. Anyone else? Silence. Good. Now let's talk about real change. Ada left the board meeting and returned to the terminal where all the passengers from the flight were still waiting. First class in one area, clearly annoyed. Economy in another, supportive but confused. She stood before them all. My name is Ada Thompson. I own Skyward Aviation Holdings, which operates this airline. What happened to me today was unacceptable. Captain Reynolds discriminated against me because of my race. Investigation reveals he's done this repeatedly, systematically, with the knowledge and complicity of company management. That ends today. The room went silent. Every passenger on this flight will receive a full refund plus $5,000 in compensation. Not because I'm legally required to, but because you all witnessed discrimination and deserved better. Gerald Patterson, the businessman who dismissed Ada earlier, stood slowly. His face was red. I think I might have been part of the problem. I paid extra cash a few times. I didn't ask questions. I should have. Yes, Ada said simply. You should have. He sat down, chastened. Carmen stood. I'm an attorney. I'll represent any passenger who wants to file individual complaints or join a class action. 7 hands shot up immediately. All people of color. All with similar stories. Then Sophia, the 9-year-old, stood up. Miss Ada? Yes, sweetheart. Can I still be a pilot someday? Ada walked over and knelt in front of her. You can be anything you want. And when you're ready to learn to fly, my airline will train you. I promise. Sophia threw her arms around Ada's neck. The hug broke something in the room. Several people started crying. Marcus approached with his phone out, showing Ada a photo. This is my daughter, Keisha. She's 15. She wants to be a pilot more than anything. After what Reynolds told her, she stopped believing she could. Bring her to my office tomorrow. I want to meet her. You serious? Completely. I need a new generation of leaders who understand what discrimination looks like and refuse to perpetuate it. Ada's assistant Rachel arrived then, with PR team and lawyers in tow. They set up a command center in an airport conference room. Ada gave rapid-fire orders. Full refunds and compensation for all passengers. Whistleblower protection and bonuses for Jenny, Marcus, and Aaron. Complete audit of all 12 divisions, not just Northeast. New independent discrimination reporting system. Mandatory anti-bias training for every employee, termination for refusal. Promotion pipeline program specifically for underrepresented groups. The cost. Her CFO started. Pay it. What's the cost of our integrity? News crews arrived within the hour. Someone had leaked the story, probably Davidson in petty revenge. Ada didn't care. She stood before the cameras and made a statement. Today I experienced what thousands of passengers of color experience regularly in air travel. Being treated as less than human. I'm fortunate to own this airline and have the power to change it. But change shouldn't require a billionaire getting discriminated against. It should be basic human decency. Skyward Aviation failed that test. We're fixing it, starting now. A reporter shouted, "What would you say to Captain Reynolds? I hope he learns from this. Hatred is exhausting. It corrupted him and damaged everyone around him. I don't forgive him, but I hope someday he finds a way to be better." Will you sue? I don't need to sue my own company. But I'm establishing a $20 million fund for passengers who want to pursue legal action. It'll be managed by an independent board. Within an hour, the story had gone viral. Someone had recorded Sophia hugging Ada. The image spread across social media. Comments flooded in by the thousands. I've been bumped from first class 3 times. All 3 times, white passengers got my seat. My daughter wants to be a pilot. She's black. She's terrified. I'm white and I've benefited from this system without questioning it. I'm ashamed. But also, she's playing the race card. Reverse discrimination. He was just doing his job. Ada read them all. The hate didn't surprise her. The support humbled her. Rachel appeared at her shoulder. The story's everywhere. Stock is dropping. It'll recover. You seem sure. I am. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm doing exactly what this company was built for. Standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Outside the window, Ada could see the plane that had started all this. Her plane. Her airline. Her responsibility. Time to make it worthy of the faith people were putting in it. 48 hours later, Ada's private investigator delivered a report that made the Reynolds incident look like the tip of an iceberg. She sat in her Manhattan headquarters, reading through page after page of evidence that made her sick. 6 of her 12 divisions had similar schemes. Different variations, but the same core rot. Cash payments. Systematic bumping of passengers of color. Buried complaints. The total stolen revenue, $1.2 million over 3 years. Estimated passengers discriminated against, over 400. Ada called an emergency summit. Every division head, summoned to New York immediately. They arrived nervous. Some defiant. She projected the findings on a massive screen. "This is who we've become," she said. "Not an airline. A system of discrimination with planes attached." Thomas Wilcox, Southeast Division head, leaned back in his chair. "Ada, you're overreacting. A few bad actors don't represent 400 passengers." "How many in your division, Thomas?" "We handle complaints appropriately." Ada pulled up his division's records. 23 complaints of discrimination in 2 years. 0 resulted in discipline. "Explain." "Those were investigated by your HR director." "Who reports to you?" "You investigated yourself and found yourself innocent." Wilcox's face reddened. "This is witch hunt. This is accountability. Here's what's happening. External audits for every division. Independent investigation of every complaint. Confidential employee interviews. Anyone who enabled, ignored, or perpetrated discrimination has 30 days to resign with severance or face termination and criminal charges." 3 division heads stood to leave. "Sit down," Ada said quietly. "Walk out now, and you're fired immediately with no severance. And I'll personally destroy your careers." They sat. Patricia Chen, Midwest Division head, stood instead. "Ada's right. I've been documenting issues in my division for a year. I stayed silent because I was afraid of being fired. That was wrong." She presented her own evidence. Discrimination in hiring, promotions, passenger treatment. "I want to help fix this," Patricia said. Ada nodded. "You just became Chief Diversity Officer. You report directly to me." The transformation plan rolled out. New Passenger Bill of Rights, posted visibly on every plane. Independent Complaint Board with real power. Financial penalties for divisions with discrimination findings. Bonuses for divisions that improved diversity metrics. Partnership with civil rights organizations for oversight. The CFO presented the cost, $40 million in refunds, legal fees, restructuring. Plus revenue loss from terminations. "Stock will tank when this goes public," he warned. "Our stock. Our choice. We pay." Ada called Jenny to headquarters. The young flight attendant arrived terrified. "You risked everything to tell the truth," Ada said. "That's leadership. I'm making you passenger advocate director. 20% raise. Direct reporting line to me." Jenny started crying. "I barely finished community college. I started as a flight attendant too. Education matters less than character." Keisha arrived with Marcus. The 15-year-old was brilliant, nervous, passionate. She'd already passed her private pilot written exam. "Why aviation?" Ada asked her. "Because every time I see a plane, I see possibility. And because people like Captain Reynolds told me I couldn't." "How would you fix this industry?" Keisha pulled out a 10-page proposal. Recruiting from underserved communities. Scholarship programs. Mentorship networks. Ada hired her on the spot. Part-time through high school. Full scholarship to any aviation program. Job waiting after graduation. That night, alone in her office, Ada looked at the photo of her grandmother Ruth. "I let it happen, Grandma. I built something and didn't watch close enough. People suffered because I wasn't paying attention." She'd become so focused on growth, on success, on profit, that she'd stopped seeing the people. Stopped remembering what it felt like to be powerless. Never again. She wrote a new mission statement. Skyward Aviation exists to connect people with dignity, to create opportunity for all, and to prove that profit and principle can coexist. We will fail sometimes. But we will never stop trying to be better. She posted it on every wall. Sent it to every employee. Made it the first page of every training manual. The work was just beginning. 3 weeks after the incident, Ada's story dominated national news. CNN, national magazines, congressional attention. Other airlines faced sudden scrutiny. Passengers across the industry shared discrimination stories that had been buried for years. Captain Sarah Brennan called from Pittsburgh. I've been airport security for 20 years. Seen this everywhere. Want to help? Ada hired her as Security and Safety Oversight Director. Brennan brought a network of airport personnel willing to report discrimination. Together, they created an industry-wide database. The backlash came hard. Conservative media attacked. Woke billionaire destroying aviation. Death threats arrived. Ada hired security but refused to hide. Then the support surged. Civil rights organizations partnered with Skyward. Bookings initially dropped, then exploded. People of color specifically chose Skyward. White allies joined them. Revenue increased 15%. Reynolds' FAA license was revoked. Federal charges filed. His wife divorced him. Former colleagues distanced themselves. He appeared on a right-wing podcast, playing victim. Cancel culture destroyed my life. Ada didn't respond publicly. But privately, to Rachel, he still doesn't understand. That's the tragedy. One of the other fired captains, Mitchell, sent a letter. I have no excuse. I was raised to see people as equal but acted otherwise when it benefited me. Your courage exposed my cowardice. I'm in therapy, volunteering with youth programs, trying to understand and atone. I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know some of us are trying. Ada filed the letter. Didn't respond. But told Rachel, maybe there's hope. Other airlines scrambled. 3 announced similar audits. 2 fired executives. The industry trade group created new standards. Ada testified before Congress. A senator asked, was your experience unique? My power to respond was unique. The experience happens daily. She showed videos from passengers. Stories of discrimination across airlines. Committee members wept. New legislation proposed, Airline Passenger Rights Act. Independent reporting systems. Financial penalties. Compensation standards. Informally called Ada's Law. Ada created a foundation, Thompson Aviation Equity Initiative. $100 million endowment. Scholarships. Training programs. Legal defense for discrimination victims. Aaron, the co-pilot who testified, couldn't find work elsewhere. Blacklisted despite being a whistleblower. Ada hired him as director of pilot training. His mandate, recruit and mentor diverse candidates. Why trust me, he asked. I stayed silent so long. Because you found courage when it mattered. Redemption should be possible. Patricia Chen's diversity initiatives transformed the company. Hiring metrics shifted. Passenger satisfaction reached industry highs. Other companies copied the model. Year-end projections surprised everyone. Despite $40 million in immediate costs, brand value jumped $300 million. Customer loyalty soared. Employee retention improved. Stock price exceeded previous highs. Doing the right thing was also good business. 1 year later, Ada stood in the Ruth Foster Aviation Academy, named for her grandmother. The first graduating class, 12 new pilots. 8 women of color. 3 first-generation immigrants. One was Keisha, Marcus's daughter, youngest graduate at 16. Ada gave the commencement address. A year ago, I was told to move to the back of a plane I owned. The humiliation wasn't new. It was the same humiliation my grandmother felt. The same I felt as a young flight attendant. What was new was my power to respond. And that power came with responsibility. Not just to punish, but to change the system. Not just to fix my company, but to challenge an industry. Not just to succeed myself, but to create paths for others. You 12 are proof that change is possible. Keisha gave the student response. When I was 14, a pilot told me I didn't have the temperament to fly. He meant because I'm black, because I'm a girl, because I'm young. He was wrong about my temperament. But right to be afraid. I don't have the temperament to accept discrimination. To stay quiet. To be treated as less than. None of us do. That's why we're here. Ms. Thompson showed us that power isn't just money. It's using what you have to make things better. She used her billions. We'll use our skills, our voices, our refusal to accept the unacceptable. To everyone who tried to stop us, watch what we do next. After the ceremony, Ada gathered everyone from that original flight. Carmen, now a lead civil rights attorney. Sophia, taking flight lessons at 10. Marcus, now chief security officer. Jenny, thriving as passenger advocate director. Aaron, who'd trained these graduates. Captain Brennan, whose intervention had been crucial. Someone asked about Reynolds. Teaching at a small flight school in Montana, Ada said. Far from commercial aviation. I hear he's different. Quieter. Maybe humbler. I don't know if he's changed inside. Not my concern anymore. The Airline Passenger Rights Act had passed. Discrimination complaints industry-wide dropped 40%. Diverse hiring up across the sector. 3 major airlines adopted Skyward's model. Rachel asked privately, was it worth it? You lost the Dubai deal. $400 million. I gained something worth more. What? The ability to look in the mirror. Sophia pulled Ada aside. I want to be the first Latina astronaut on Mars. Ada laughed. Why stop at first Latina? Why not first person? Because I want girls like me to know they can. Then let's make it happen. Skyward's expanding to aerospace. We'll need visionaries. Ada visited her grandmother's grave, bringing photos of the graduates. I did what you taught me, Grandma. Remembered everything. Learned from their world. Built my own better. But it's not finished. Never will be. There will always be people who judge by skin instead of character. The fight doesn't end. But neither do we. Ada boarded a Skyward flight. The new captain greeted her. Ms. Thompson, it's an honor. Captain Tamara Wright. I trained at Ruth Foster Academy. First time as captain. You'll be brilliant. Ada settled into seat 1A. The cabin was diverse, comfortable, dignified. A young black boy stared. His father whispered, that's Ms. Thompson. She owns this airline. Made it fair for everyone. The boy asked, really? Ada winked. Not equal. Fair. There's a difference. Equal means everyone gets the same. Fair means everyone gets what they need. Captain Tamara's voice came through, good afternoon. This is Captain Wright. Welcome aboard Skyward Aviation, where every passenger matters. We're honored to serve you. Ada closed her eyes. Remembered the humiliation of being told to move. Her grandmother's strength. Everyone who said she couldn't. She smiled. Ada opened her laptop. Email from a senator about healthcare discrimination. Another from a tech CEO seeking diversity advice. Another from a grad student studying systemic change. She'd become more than a billionaire. She'd become a symbol. Not because she was perfect, but because when tested, she chose right over easy. Justice over comfort. Change over complicity. The fight continues. But so does the hope. So let me ask you this. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination like this? Would you speak up or stay silent? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to see more stories of justice and courage. And share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right always matters, even when it costs everything. Thank you for watching. Remember, change starts when ordinary people refuse to accept the unacceptable. Stay strong, stay brave, and I'll see you in the next story. This story teaches us that power without accountability breeds injustice, but courage with conviction creates lasting change. Ada's experience reveals that discrimination thrives not just through individual bigotry, but through systemic silence. When good people stay quiet, when witnesses turn away, when institutions protect the powerful instead of the vulnerable, racism becomes embedded in everyday operations. The most profound lesson is that real change requires more than anger. It demands strategic action, documentation, and the willingness to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term justice. Ada didn't just fire one racist captain. She dismantled the entire corrupt system that enabled him. She transformed witnesses like Jenny, Marcus, and Aaron from scared bystanders into empowered advocates. We learn that position doesn't make you immune to discrimination. Being a billionaire didn't protect Ada from humiliation. But what separated her experience from countless others was her ability to respond with resources and influence. This highlights the urgent need for protective systems that defend everyone, not just those with power. Finally, this story proves that doing what's right can also be good business. Ada's commitment to dignity over profit initially cost $40 million, but ultimately increased her company's value by $300 million. Integrity and success aren't opposites. They're partners. The question isn't whether discrimination exists. It's whether we have the courage to confront it when we see it. What would you do in Ada's position? If you had the power to expose injustice, would you risk everything to make it right? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed discrimination on a flight or in any service industry? Tell us your story. If you believe that every person deserves dignity regardless of their race, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because we're committed to sharing stories that inspire courage and demand justice. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right always matters, even when the cost is high. Thank you for watching and for caring about these important issues. Remember, change doesn't come from the powerful alone. It comes from ordinary people who refuse to accept the unacceptable. You have more power than you think. Use it wisely. Use it bravely. And never stop fighting for a world where everyone is treated with the respect they deserve. Stay strong, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next story.